Let me begin by talking about my residential school day, talking about the book itself, the photos in the book, which are really nice. Okay, hang on here. I forgot to hit the share screen. And you could ask questions as you go along here. There's that handsome dude. Yeah, scary. You could laugh. This is me. It says 13 here, but I beg to differ. I was 12 actually, because I started wearing glasses when I was 13. So I know this before I started wearing glasses. So I was 12. And I was in Air Cadets, and one of the things that we did at the residential school was be involved in Air Cadets, and we used to have competitions for best dressed Air Cadet every time we went. The shiniest shoes, I learned how to spit shine my shoes. Whoever won the best dress competition got a movie ticket for the local movie theater. And so I loved movies. I worked hard to get the best dressed cadet each week, so I could go to movies for free in downtown Prince Albert. And that's me as an Air Cadet. And another important thing about this Air Cadet situation is that I was involved in developing photographs with the Air Cadet, one of the Air Cadet leaders. And I was in a dark room, and he taught me how to develop photographs. And it's at that time that I started really enjoying photography. It's one of my hobbies to this day, and it started way back then when I was 12. So there are some good things happening from those times. And I still have that scar in there on my nose. I got that when I was a kid, running around on the trapline, and my older brother was filling a molasses, Rogers syrup can with water, and I was running around him, and I tripped, and I fell right on the can, and this is where that thing is from there. I still have that scar, and that's how I got that scar. So a lot of us have our stories, our memories to remember, and I remember crying a lot, but I don't know if my brother remembers that, but next time I see him, I'll ask him. But that's how I got that scar on my nose. And somebody calls me a nerd all the time. Best student. I didn't really want to brag about this, but I just showed it to the publisher, and they thought, let's put it in the book. So they did. I have about 4 of these for that consecutive years and stuff. And I was learning English at the time. So, and when I grew up, I tried to make a living in Regina, but nobody would hire me because I was too brown. So I headed back north to my home community in Ronge. I found a job in Ronge. I was working at 6 part-time jobs in Ronge. Although I did apply for welfare, but welfare didn't provide me enough money for partying. So at that time I was partying a lot. So I worked at 6 part-time jobs to get by. And one of the jobs I had was working as a I don't know, a busboy, I guess, at the local liquor store. I'd go out and get the bottles for everybody that was coming in to buy. You know, people couldn't walk around the liquor store in those times. So you just had to order what you wanted. Like somebody would go get it, and I'd go get the bottles. And one of my cousins saw me there and asked me, "How many jobs do you have?" And I said, 5 or 6, or something. They're all part-time. And he said, "Well, come and see me in the office. I might have something for you because you still, and you can still speak Cree." So I went to his office, it's the Department of Northern Saskatchewan Information Services office, and he asked me, "Do you want to work on radio?" So I said, yes. Finally, a full-time job. You know, I let go all the rest of the jobs and started working in radio. And it was really up my alley because I'd had to go on the road. I'd have to go on the road and interview people in northern Saskatchewan. Then we'd take our interview to the studio and make a radio program of that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go and interview elders most of the time. So I had a lot of tapes of the elders, and I put them on air, and that's how they're all speaking in Cree. It's all in Cree. So my interest in Cree and my interest in stories really got a nice boost with this job as an information services. I really like that. And while I was doing that, this colleague of mine showed up in my office one day and handed me a whole bunch of tapes. And he said, "This is from my mother-in-law in Pelican Arrows." And there's 4 tapes there that she had made for me. And she said, "This is for you, for your use later on." So that's, now that I'm retired, I could get at those tapes and start working on them. And I was so honored that she'd take the time to make tapes for me. And so just wonderful, wonderful stories of the old days, and traditional stories and the whole bit. So that was really super. Winter semester, 1986. And no, I am not smoking a joint. I had a rollie, drum tobacco. That's what it was. And the students were doing an exam, a midterm at this time, and I'm sitting on the desk like that. And some of the students in this class are still Facebook friends of mine today. This is winter 1985 semester. And so some of the students who are in this class here are in my Facebook page as friends. Really neat. So I've been working since 1984, 85, and there's my mom and dad. This was taken in 1976 when I still had teeth. And my father's name was William, and my mother's name was Alice. And these are it. And here is me in the Vancouver Capilano Park, having a staring match with Kalijah. How many of you know that song? Kalijah was an Indian. Do. That stuff. Hank Williams, phone Kalijah. He won. I could not outstare him. He's still there.
I hope everybody's enjoying this presentation as much as I am. I'm like just chuckling away here.
I thought I'd better explain these photos. The guy's still there, but he's in the storage room now. They put him away, unfortunately. But look at the knife. There, that'll make you chuckle more. Oh boy. And that's it. That's me. A couple of years ago when we had that Every Child Matters. So those are the photos that go with the book here. If there are any questions about the photos, I'll see what we have here.
Don't see any questions yet. Does anybody just want to take themselves off mute and ask a question now? If not, that's okay too. We can always just
yeah, I'm curious. So the photo of you and your mother and your father, that was taken, you said, back when? You said it was when you had teeth, but
that was in 1976.
1976. And
yeah,
what was your relationship like, I guess, like going through residential school and all of that, and then still having your parents, like what were, like, was there differences between the relationship you have with your mom and your dad, or how were they able to, like, the family able to support each other going through something like that?
They were very loving every time we came home. Like we went home every summer. We spent the summer time. We spent the summers with my parents, and they were very loving. They were very supportive, and a lot of people who went to residential school quit when they were 16 because they could legally quit school then, right? I tried the same thing, but my parents wouldn't let me. They told me, school is where you belong. Now we want you to finish. And they were really, really supportive of me, of my schooling. And all sorts of other things that they had. The only thing they didn't do for me was they didn't tell me my traditional stories. I asked. They tell me the traditional stories before I went to residential school. When I came home the first time I came home from residential school, I asked my parents to tell me the traditional stories because I love these stories. And they said, we can't tell you, it's summertime. Wintertime is storytelling time. But when I started working for the radio program, I was able to hear those stories from the elders and hear them again. And I was able to revive those stories for myself and write them. The book has a whole bunch of, I don't know how many stories are in the back, and as I've heard them. So I was able to get the stories. And I also found the stories in the library at University of Regina Library. And a book called Leonard Bloomfield's, what is it? Sacred Stories of the Sweetgrass Cree. There was stories in English. The story on the other side was stories in Cree, or vice versa. I think Darian has a copy of that book, and but it's an interesting book. You know, I found that book, and I also went into the microfiches and found Edward Hennecu's Cree trickster stories, which has all the stories that I heard when I was a kid in there. So I was able to bring those stories into mind, and because I still speak Cree, I was able to translate a lot of those stories back into English. Now, let's go back to Bloomfield. My former students know this story very well, so that's why a lot of them are smiling away. Anyway, Saskatchewan comes along, these little birds on a nest, and he asks them their name. I'm not telling the story because it's not wintertime yet, but I'm just highlighting the events here. So he asked them their names, and they said, no, we can't tell you our name. Our name is sacred. We just don't share it with anybody. And he says, oh, come on now. You know me as Big Brother, and you know me as Wissahichak. So I have two names. Everybody in this world has two names. And the little guy said, well, our mother told us never tell our name as Oguskohuizak. Oguskohuizak. Oguskohuizak means startlers. Okay. And so he say, and he immediately defecates on the heads and uses some of them that he missed to wipe himself with later. And he goes on his way, just laughing, going, ha, 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 ha. Now, Edward Hennecu told that story in his Cree Trickster Tales, and he says, and as soon as the little birds revealed their names, Wissahichak picked them up and rubbed mud on their faces. That's how he edited that naughty bit. Leonard Bloomfield, on the other hand, would say, and Wissahichak, as soon as Wissahichak heard the little birds mention their names, he ... and he went on his way. Now, I'm a curious rat. Curiosity killed a rat, right? Where's that cat? Oh, well, anyway. So I go to the Cree session of Bloomfield's book, and I read it. Everything is intact in Cree in Bloomfield's text. He didn't translate that part, but he left it in Cree. So it's a wonderful book. So I got to know the stories from there. And my late mother was a great storyteller. So was my father. Now they worked in tandem, which is really neat. First, the initial storyteller was my mother. And she would tell me stories and me and my brother's stories in the wintertime. And once in a while, she'd miss a section. And then my father would get in there and tell, hey, I forgot this. And then he'd go take a little bit. And then my father would go back in. And that's how stories were kept intact throughout history. There'd be people who knew the stories, and people telling the stories might miss something. Somebody would be there to correct or add to the story. And that was really wonderful to have that kind of stuff going on. So my relationships with my parents was good, even though I was away from them 10 months of the year. But they really were supportive of my education. And when I started working, they were still alive when I started working for the radio, and they were really proud of me because I was doing all that. Talking in Cree, interviewing in Cree, whooping in Cree.
Thank you so much for sharing that and giving some insight into your childhood. I guess I do have a follow-up question. The wintertime stories and summertime, is that is it a Cree thing? Is it an Indigenous thing? I'm curious about that little statement there. Wondering if you could elaborate on it. Were stories mostly told in the wintertime? Is that like the winter, when you mentioned that your parents had said it's winter or it's summertime, stories are for wintertime? Is there
that's pretty well pan First Nations. Most First Nations told stories in the wintertime. That's the only time they ever told stories. And a lot of times people think it was sacred. The sacred time of telling stories was in the winter. And but you got to think, it was very, very good to do that. But looking on it now, I look at it and I think, hold on. I grew up. My home community is in northern Saskatchewan. And sometimes the sun doesn't set until around 11 o'clock at night in the summertime. And we'd be playing outside until sundown, which is 11 at night. And then we'd go home and fall asleep. This is summertime, right? Wintertime up in northern Saskatchewan, sunset at 4 o'clock. And as kids, still had a lot of energy. We had no TV. We had no computers. But we had our parents to tell us stories until we got tired. And I think that view of that particular storytelling is not very popular because people like to think their sacred storytelling time is wintertime. But a friend of mine and I tend to go with this idea that we need to tell our stories whenever we can, because we are losing these stories and we're losing the lessons of those stories. Okay? And so him and I will tell stories during the summer months nowadays. It's picking up slowly, but more people will do it. Now, we have the story of the little startlers getting shot on their heads. What's that about, right? There is a really, really few good lessons there. And that is, thank you, I read that. And the lesson of the startlers is basically, guard your sacred name. Okay, we see it on Facebook all the time, on other social medias, people asking about, how do you spell such and such a name? How do you say, that's my Indian name, that's my Cree name, all this stuff. So we're missing this lesson of guarding your sacred name. If you give your sacred name to somebody, you're giving that person power over you. Figuratively, they could shit on your head. Another lesson in that particular story is respect. No matter how small anybody is, that person deserves respect. The story is in here in the back called Startlers. So if you want to take a chance to read it, it'll be really good. And so we have to go back to our stories. And that's basically the whole idea of this book. We need to go back to our stories to hear the lessons that are involved in these stories. And Wisaki always seems to get paid back for his trickery. I've never seen him eat.
We did have another question here, Solomon.
Okay.
Did your parents or others go to a residential school?
No. My parents never went to residential school. That's why they were able to speak Cree. They spoke nothing but Cree. My father went to the Ronge residential school for half a day. He took off, went into the woods and stayed there. My mother, on the other hand, never went to school at all. Neither of them went to school. But you know this writing system that we have that is known as syllabics? My mother knew how to write syllabics. 3 syllabics. She knew how to do that. Her older sisters taught her, and her mother taught her how to write syllabics. She never went to school, but she knew how to write syllabics. I forgot what the question was. So they never did go to school. And my sisters, I have 2 older sisters, they went to residential school. My older sister Maggie went to residential school the year I was born. 2 years later, my sister Jemima, late sister Jemima, went to residential school. And Maggie likes to say, you know, every time I went to residential school and I'd come home in the summertime, I'd have a new younger sibling. You know, from 1953, it was me, my brother Patrick, late brother Patrick, my younger sister Bella, and my youngest sister Sally. 4 of us. So the family was growing while she was out residential school. But the thing about this, I'd like to mention the title, kâ-pî-isi-kiskisiyân, the way I remember. The way I remember something may not be the way somebody else remembers it. But I also have a good memory. I remember my younger sister Bella being born in September 6th, 1958. I was 4. I was going to be 5 in a couple of months. But here we were sleeping inside the tent in Stanley Mission when my father woke us up and told us to get out of the tent, go to my uncle's place, which was next door. And so I was just grouchy like crazy. I stumbled over to my uncle's house, and me and my brothers, and went over there. My little brother Patrick was wrapped up and sleeping already in a swing there. And then my uncle Norman asked, "Do you want some stew?" And he fed us grouse stew, which is really nice. I really love it. Once in a while, I'll bake pork chops in mushroom soup, and it gives off the same smell like grouse stew. That's basically why I do that, because I love grouse stew, and I remember it from that day when my little sister was born. So I remember well, and my memories of my time at residential school are okay, I suppose. I'm wrong in a few places, but nobody's corrected me yet, and I welcome it. I welcome corrections, but and that's basically what it is. Will one of you write out the link for Cree Literacy Network onto the chat? Shannon or Veronique. If you want to hear the stories that are in this book, go to that link that one of my former students is going to do on chat. Most of the stuff that's in this book has audio components has audio components in Cree Literacy Network. Do a search on my name and you'll find a whole bunch of stories in there. Thank you, Shannon. That's really great. You'll even hear us sing sometimes on that site. And thank you. And the stories are in the back. The stories in the back are actually on Cree Literacy Network as videos. So there could be videos on there. And we can share these stories with your students whenever you want, definitely. Yes, and you can actually hear them on Cree Literacy Network if you want to hear Cree. And so everything that's in this book, practically everything that's in this book is in that site, Cree Literacy Network. And do a name search on my name and you'll have a whole bunch of stuff that you'll go, I think about 28 pages of my stuff in there. And the thing is, you can read the stories. One of my nieces who taught in high school would create plays out of some of our traditional stories for their students to do. That's really neat. So these are really great to be able to do that. And so we have this situation.
I will share my screen and show everyone what you're talking about.
Thank you.
I can.
Yeah, I don't want to share my screen because I want to go down. I want to.
Okay, me too. I have a bunch of windows open too.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, everybody see that? So this is that Cree Literacy Network.
Yeah.
And this is a bunch of resources that Solomon has
Just scroll down. Yeah.
developed. This is amazing, Solomon.
Do a search on sacred stories.
Sacred stories. How do I do that?
Yeah. And just put that. See that little microphone up there? That little microphone. That little magnifying glass up there.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's the search. Now put down sacred stories. Okay, let's have a look. Remember what I talked about Bloomfield? There's Bloomfield.
Oh, yeah. There. Bloomfield, Plains, Cree texts and sacred stories presented online.
Yeah. Scroll down. Maybe Pixie stories just in there. And then we have sacred stories, heal, final Zoom session. So these Zoom sessions are videos of me telling stories.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I took that photo of the teepees.
Oh, yeah, wow.
I love photos.
This is amazing. I'll have links to this website.
Yeah, a lot of the stories that are in this website are in this book.
Wow. Wow, and it just keeps going. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. There's a lot. That's awesome. Really good.
Do I ever get bored? No. too much to do.
Wow.
If you don't mind my asking, where is the picture of the teepees taken?
The University, First Nations University.
Oh, okay. It was
a few years ago. We had a whole bunch of teepees out there, out in the front yard. And I went and took a photo of that. And you see the little star up there? See the little white dot up there? Right
Yeah.
by the blue teepee? That's a plane.
Oh, I thought that was a North
look at
Star.
that. Yeah, it's not a star. That's actually a plane because I saw it moving overhead. So I have those photos somewhere. And that's where they were taken, First Nations University.
It's amazing. You have quite the collection here, and I'm definitely going to promote your work. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. Did we have any other questions that you'd like to ask? Oh, we do actually have some questions here.
Okay.
Okay. Can we share these stories with our students whenever then? Do we need to
Yeah.
speak to our elders first?
You can share as long as they come from the book. That's allowed.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey,
Darian.
Darren. Say again.
Oh, hey,
Ito yan,
Darian.
No,
How's it going?
que no te gagawin chim tino ay.
Keep going.
Danse gane wait man ke big sko en spigagi o sko yan. E go gagi o asesu yan. Danse e kana wait man ke big sko. You know, spigagi ma che ay me ho skra magusin.
Kaya nagawi ka. Nagawi pa naganotawi pan kapi man ay nandihewi check. Tatuni kagiki.
Like tato ni pin spigagi yan.
Speaker Gawian, Tatuni pan kagiwian. Speak on the gigi. You come in and me how exclamatory you come go kagi. Yeah, take the man and the gigi much the Hayawanan.
Yeah, kimo typic sko en appetita.
Yeah.
Ja, tapo minä sen pamtan. You know, to mai appian que na tutaten.
Hey, pies que gato te están que está vista en se mueve noche.
How?
Darian asked how I managed to speak Cree all the way through, and I told him because my parents spoke nothing but Cree to me, and we also spoke Cree on the Kimuch, as we like to say, on the sly. Like as long as there were no teachers or supervisors around us, we spoke Cree. People in my generation who went to that residential school in Prince Albert still speak Cree. And
That's amazing. See, like my parents, my mom, she was a fluent Cree speaker. That's all she spoke for until she was like 5 years old. Then she went to residential school, and that's when she learned English as well. But the trauma from residential school caused her to be so ashamed, so ashamed of the culture, be so ashamed of speaking Cree. So she never taught her children. She never taught us. She never taught us to speak Cree, even though she speaks it fluently. And when she goes back home, she speaks it fluently with her relatives. And so I feel like that even, that was a good point that you made there. Like, even though, we weren't allowed to speak it, we still spoke it. But to others, sometimes that was traumatizing enough that they didn't want to share that language or pass it down either.
And they also didn't want their children to experience the same trauma they experienced when they went to school. That's part of the main reason why they didn't pass the language onto the children. Yeah.
And that's so unfortunate. But now we have, these young people like Darian, like that, didn't have that language growing up, but they've made that effort to learn it and to be fluent in it and teach others it, which is so amazing. And it's just, I feel like we're revitalizing our languages again, or not again, but we are revitalizing our language that we lost through residential schools. And that's amazing to see.
We are. Because Darian never spoke a word of Cree until he came to First Nations University to take a class from the late Darren Mason, and then he entered into my classes, and so he kept practicing and he kept reading. And this is one of the things I want to stress is the reading. See, because I had trouble learning English when I first went to residential school until I started reading. I started reading a lot, and I still read a lot today, but that's what helped me understand English faster, was the reading thing. And we spoke English all over the place, and that's where we lack with our language, our Cree language, is that we don't speak Cree everywhere and anywhere. We don't hear it. You walk around the park in Regina, like Wascana Park, and you hear Asians talking Chinese or Korean or Japanese, and you hear Ukrainians speaking Ukrainian. You hear other nationalities speaking their language openly along the parks as we walk along the street. And you run into a First Nations person, and they speak nothing but English. So whenever Darian sees me, he just goes ahead and blah, 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 you know, speaks Cree to me, which is really great. And that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Things are changing. I've been working in the field for over 30 years, almost 40 years now. And when I started, there was no visibility of our language anywhere. There were no signs in Cree. There was no radio programs in Cree. Mox and Telegraph came in. Remember that, Gary Fox? Mox and Telegraph was on, but they were speaking English here. And then we did our radio program in Prince Albert. We spoke nothing but Cree in those programs. And we also had Dene in those programs. We called it Northern News. And so we started hearing Cree more and more and more. And it's happening that movies are starting to bring in Cree in their movies, which is a really good thing to do. And we do, yeah, we have to break down the barriers, and we have to quit being ashamed of our language. And that's been the case a lot of times. There's a lot of us who are ashamed of our language. And we just went ahead and told jokes in Cree all the time and had a great time telling our little stories. I called a nephew of mine Butch. And he finally asked me, how can you call me Butch? Butch, P-O-C, Butch. Oh, that's short for kibbutz. What does that mean? Constipated ass. In other words, don't ask me for a Cree name, okay? I'm not qualified. Darius, should I call you Butch?
I was right there.
I won't call you that though.
I just want to mention a little bit of a plug here, but so Reconciliation Regina, we do actually have beginner language classes. We had it's called Reconciliation Through a Language Learning Series, and it focuses on the languages that was lost through residential school. So that includes Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Michif. We just finished off Michif just a few weeks ago, and you know, it's just we have great instructors. You know, we have like Darian, he was teaching our Cree class, and we have Russell Fayant, he was teaching our Michif. Like we just, you know, like when you have an environment like that with instructors that are funny and they make the classes fun, like it makes it so much enjoyable and you're learning. And all of those classes were recorded and they were uploaded to the Reconciliation Regina YouTube channel. So if you're interested, you don't need any, you know, prior experience. It's completely beginner. So you just, there's 10 classes for each session. So check it out. I think we are going to be starting up a new series again next month. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, it's just so great. Everything's so active. What's the word I'm looking for? Everything. There's so much activity in teaching language now.
Absolutely. And there's resources out there too. If you really want to learn a language,
yeah,
there's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
You just have to put the time and the effort in.
Exactly. And I've loved teaching. A couple of students of mine asked me a couple of weeks ago if I missed teaching. And I said, no.
I thought you were going to say, yeah.
I lied. I don't miss the classroom, basically.
No.
But I miss the students and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
yeah. Well, that's a long time for teaching for you. You know, you must have met a lot of different people and students, and
yeah,
that's amazing. I'm look forward to reading all of your literature and learning more about you, Solomon. That's amazing. So, you know, from the sounds of it, you know, you didn't let the experience of going through residential school, you know, affect you in terms of like, in negatively, right? Like you didn't, I guess, you know, some people go through different types of trauma and, you know, and suffering and things like that.
But I did.
And
I did.
You did?
I did go through a lot of trauma in there. And part of the trauma exhibited itself into my drug addiction and into my alcoholism. That's how that's how I ended going there. I haven't used drugs or alcohol since 1986 now. It's been a while. You know, but that was part of the trauma for me.
Mm-hmm.
Becoming that. And now we have this truth and reconciliation. And I was bitter. Reconciliation means that two people of the two parties have to reconcile their differences because they both did wrong, right? But we never did anything wrong. We were kids. So I had to get away from that anger and say, how can I use reconciliation? And I turned that reconciliation around to myself, to have reconciliation for my trauma, to go through the healing process of what I needed to do. And that's part of the thing that is this thing. That's my healing journey came through here. And a few years ago, like a lot of stuff that's in this book were initially put for Pre-Literacy Network. It's my colleague Arden to put in there, to put for access for educators. And educators go into that site a lot to use materials. And so I was doing all this stuff, doing little reminiscences of residential school. Then I realized what I was doing. I was reconciling my trauma from the school. And so that's where reconciliation comes from me. And I went through the whole healing process. And then a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I told Arden, who's the editor of this book, why don't we make a book of all these little stories and get it together? That's a darn good idea. Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we each have to go through our own personal reconciliation with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of my addictions dealt with self-hate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I believe we all have our own healing journeys that we're all going through. Everybody, every one of us, every human being has some sort of a journey that they're going on, right? And I like that you have took that from a negative to a positive. You know, it fed your work. It helped you to heal in so many different ways. Somebody was going to say something.
Yeah, I think Neely's was. Oh, Manny Maga. My niece showed up in my office one time and says, Manny Maga. My niece showed up in my office and said, hey, uncle, how do you say a word in Cree? And the closest I could attempt to was Manny Maga, as in for sure. That's the way it is. So Manny Maga. So a week later she comes to this cup and says, there you go, uncle. Word. Whatever that means in English. Really neat. Okay, was there any other questions?
Yeah, anybody else have any questions? Oh, do you still keep in touch with some friends from residential school?
Yes, I do. I keep in touch with quite a few of them, thanks to Facebook. And also when I go up north, I will see a few people up there. And we tease each other on Facebook. You'll notice a lot of teasing between me and these guys on Facebook, and to this day. And one of them is Marty Halkett. It's a childhood friend of mine. Because basically, during Christmas time, parents would call for their children to come home, and the parents would have to pay the travel costs to get their children home. My parents and Martin's parents were too poor to send for us. So we ended up staying at the residential school over the holidays. So we bonded because of that. And we're still friends today. And we happened to, at the time, share the same birthday. So he's a year younger than I am. but we have the same birthday, so we bonded that way too. And I still talk to him, and I still tease him, and I love the relationship we have, and other people too. I associate with. I run into them every now and then when I'm off somewhere, and I'll run into them, and we talk, and we'll talk in Cree if it's from that area. But we'll talk about our days at the residential school. And here's something. Some of us say, "Hey, remember the good old days when we used to go to the drill hall for air cadets?" Good old days. Dealing with residential school? What's that all about, huh? We choose to remember the good things, because the bad things can kill us.
So I have a question. So for somebody that's, I guess, struggling, with their past traumas, I guess, what kind of advice would you provide for people that are struggling in that way?
The first thing you have to do, that I had to do, let me speak from personal experience. First thing I had to do was move myself away from the environment I was in. I had to leave my partying buddies behind, start making new friends, people who were following the sober life. I had to do that. Had I stayed in that same environment, I would not have been able to stay sober. So I had to make new friends.
But what made you want to change that, though? Like, what was like the breaking point or the...
Losing my children because of alcohol and drugs. Here's the thing. Early 1984, my friend Barry and I were drinking downtown, and I had started teaching in the spring semester of 1984. We were drinking, and I was living off the street, basically, couch hopping and stuff. And so I managed to teach a class on spring 1984. And then my friend says, "Solomon, you are too brilliant to waste your life on alcohol. Tell you what we'll do." And he told me, I'm living on unemployment insurance right now. Let's drink that. We'll drink that unemployment insurance through the summer, and when it runs out, you and I are going to go to detox. Well, some August 22nd, 1984, he's run out of unemployment insurance, and he calls a friend of ours, and she took us to the detox, and we started sobering up at that time, and I started making new friends at that time. 6 months later, he says, "Well, Solomon, you've made new friends now. Stay with the friends. I'm going back." He went back. I stayed put. Can I cry now? But that's the thing. I had to move away from everybody if I was going to stay sober. And I did that till I got strong enough. And as some of you know, I'm a karaoke singer. I went back to the bars a few years ago to sing karaoke. And even that was healing. That was part of the thing. Singing songs was healing for me at that time. That's why I was out there a lot. But I didn't drink. I made sure the people I hung out with in the bars would watch out for me, that I wouldn't get involved in the drinking and stuff. It was really good. And I had good support with me. One of them's right there, Randy. I see you, Randy. And so, that's the thing you have to do. I mean, you cannot stay sober if you keep hanging around with people that you're partying with. And it gave me a lot of times. But I remember every single day of my sober days, I could have lots of fun. I traveled the world since I sobered up. I hiked some really awesome mountains. Took some really good photographs. I was able to pursue the stuff that I love to do. And I remember when I started teaching, in 1984, and then 1984 I sobered up, and but I thought maybe I'd be teaching a fall class in 1984, but the boss said, no, I hear you've been drinking all summer long. I can't give you a job on account of that. This is a false image of 1984. So I stayed put. I stayed sober. Come January, she calls me and said, I have a class for you to teach. You want to come and teach it? And I said, well, let me think about it. I don't know if I'm strong enough for a while. So I went and talked to my friends, and they said, I think you're strong enough. Go for it. And so I started teaching a sessional lecture on the winter semester of 1985. That picture I showed you earlier. Do that. And I've been teaching since. And I eventually came on full time in 1986 and retired this past year.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I know that was very personal to you, but I just thought that was important to, I guess, for inspiration, if there's people out there that are struggling with the same, with the same issue. And yeah, alcohol does cloud the mind, and it makes, when you stop, it makes it more clear, right, to your purpose in life. And I'm glad you're able to find your purpose and doing what makes you happy. Obviously, it opened a lot of doors for you and opportunities. Awesome. Did we have any other questions here? I know we had some comments come through.
I never did read anything from the book yet.
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on the questions here. We got a lot of nice, good supporting comments. Thank you so much. Oh, G Fox, he hosts a karaoke at Clark's Crossing in Saskatoon on Saturdays.
Okay, I might make a trip that way.
Oh, also, so Wendy just put in a link here. So
Thank you.
In order for us to continue offering programs like this, we ask you guys to fill the survey out. It'll take a minute, it's a minute or two, so that we know some of the programs that we want to focus our efforts on. And yeah, it's in there. It's in the chat. We have a question here. Any experience with your spirit guide or a similar higher power experience?
That is other personal. I rarely talk about things like that. And, each of us, I myself have a spirit guide. I also believe in a creator of my own understanding, of course. And I do my prayers. Not every morning, I guess most of the time I forget. But when I do my prayers when I remember, and I do lay down tobacco when I go out walking around. That kind of stuff. I do that for the sake of good health, good mental health. But as the stories would tell you, these are the sacred kind of things that are very sacred to each individual. I like that. Okay, I think maybe I'll read something, and I want to have a chance to have Darian read a story, just to show that people can read who have never spoken English before. I mean, Cree before. Okay. I decided to pick on Darian because he's done this before. I'm going to read. I only have time to read one thing, and this is basically the gist of the struggles I've gone through with school. It's called, on page 133, for those of you who do have the book. And I'm going to share my screen so you can follow those of you who don't have the book. And I'm just going to read the English since we are lacking time here. And you can get this poem at the Cree Literacy Network. If you want to hear the Cree, it is on Cree Literacy Network. Okay, so I'll do the English. On the threshold of a dream, they forbade me to use my language through which I know and name the world, my terms of order, my metaphysical system, my expressive cultural practices. They sought but failed to make my consciousness of my cultural self a tabula rasa, a blank slate, on which to build a new cultural and social order on which my Creeness was obliterated and erased, and the concept of drunkard, lazy, evil, and every negative connotation of Indian that Western culture could create would be reinscribed on that blank slate. They failed. Imagine you're a child playing, jumping, climbing trees, marveling at everything in the world, secure in the love you feel from others. Then the priests came to kidnap you. All right. Are you ready, Darian? Tapagan. You want to do the because I can't say the word, Shannon will probably make fun of me. Crab apples.
Oh.
Is it grab apples? Crab apples? I don't know. It's an English word. How do you say that word?
Crab apple?
There we go. Yeah. Even you have problems with it.
A crab.
Crab
Lagi
apple?
pitsugasak. We say pitsugasak.
Yeah, we sing a pitsugasak. Yeah. Okay. You found it?
Let's go to Dante. What?
I'm looking for it too.
Isso Awea guiche henan. Asay wan kiskisiyân page.
Horse lips, 173. 173.
Okay. Nga gia imitan.
I
Niyo pogo kia Simon.
I guess so. Everybody wants to hear it speak Cree.
Esta tamotun siga teo ma Simon. Opo mi kiskrama to gamgo kia stio min sita go. Gatamana kio chima swako kiskrama giwak. We sage pitchgasa. Simoya kwao speaka tistri. Wagamana michito au niginto kimutanan. Yago chito ke peaga gutta min sita kagi kitadimit. Mi peak bistatim. Iga kita kimutia kwisagi pitchgasa. Itugi. Wagamonanto. Pero tausik niginto kimutanan yago ni wisagi pitchgasa. Kaya mana bistatim. Negi patawanan min gan era papeak mistik negi squatawatanan. Much nanto tangin che wapamanan anamistat. Eguano my agusiak, Mr. Gok, a mamo miniac. It at the wake pita wakwa which you aganak. Makawa, they got tapasitan, a mato a trichik. A pitoa wake si puepatachik. Puitre perna pera kita timigoyak, netetitin. Meswatch swimming Mr. Gok Nictagusan. The march can go up mick, netitan, netak me woman. Iguane o ma tiguani, o chin to cigar quagui o chipetin, we say pitchagas, Gassam in a man, Giguais apple peak. They that take out tut mistatim. Nikushkomik. Metene nici pagisinian Mr. Cote digo che guscomet. What is a gigago mominian? The horse lips. At the residential school, there was an orchard from where the teachers would harvest crab apples, which they fed us when they were ripe. But many times we would go and steal those crab apples. Maybe that is why they kept a horse there one time, so that we would not go in to steal the crab apples. Maybe, but no matter. One evening, we went to steal some of those crab apples. Never mind the horse. We sneaked under the fence and each of us climbed a tree. We didn't see the horse anywhere. And there we were, up in the trees when I heard my buddies. Here he comes! Come on, let's run! Maybe it's one of the supervisors, I think. In any case, I'm up a tree. He won't see me, I say. I continue to pick crab apples to eat. And as I was reaching into the branches to pick another crab apple, I felt something wet. All of a sudden, a horse neighed. Nee! He surprised me. I was so surprised that I fell out of the tree. Apparently, I was trying to pick his nose to eat. Yeah.
Thank you. So, that's really good. A big hand for Darian. Okay, I'm going to read from 206, 209. I think we got a little time here.
It's awesome.
I'm going to try to find it so you can follow. Page 209. You found it? Okay, here we go. I'm going to share the screen so you can follow. Where is the love? Listen, think on these. This, it is night at your home. You put wood into the stove. You light the candle. You lay out the blankets and cover yourselves with a down quilt. Your mother starts telling stories. Outside, an owl hoots. The fire in the stove crackles. Candle casts shadows. Softly, your mother tells stories. You begin to sleep. Or this. It is night at the residential school. You line up to choose a biscuit, a dog biscuit for yourself. You say your prayers. You lay down to sleep. Lights are turned off. For a long time, you watch the shadows every time a car drives by outside. Eventually, you fall asleep. The lights over the ceiling, like that, were going against the ceiling. And it reminded me of prisoner of war movies and prison movies, where the searchlight comes around the dorms to show who was out. That's what that reminds me of, is the prisoner of war movies with that searchlight looking out and you're imprisoned in there. I think I have time for a story, but I have to do it in English. And once again, okay, this is on 301, page 301. This is a teaching of traditional story. Don't disrespect sacred ceremony. Once Wisakichak was, well, I'll have to read it because we got no snow in outside, so I'll read it. Once Wisakichak was walking along, all of a sudden he saw some chickadees having fun. They would take out their eyes, throwing them in the air. They would fall back into their eye sockets. They would laugh loudly every time this happened. He thought they were doing a wondrous thing. Surely you are gifted, said Wisakichak. Please teach me that thing. Go away, Wisakichak. This is a sacred ceremony. We cannot teach you for no reason, they told him. He begins to leave from there, somewhat angry. He then goes and disguises himself. He dresses himself up like an old man, and again goes to where the chickadees are playing. Really old man. He even bends over just like an old man. He groans in pain. Oh. The chickadees notice him and take pity on him. Okay, wait, grandfather, they say. We will show you this which will heal you. If you take your eyes and throw them up in the air and let them fall back in your eye sockets, you will no longer have a headache, they tell him. Okay, please teach me, grandchild, says Wisakichak. And so they teach him the way to do that. He threw his eyes up in the air and fell back into his head. Risaki-Jack was so happy. Listen, this is what you have to do when you have a headache, said the bird. Don't disrespect us. Okay, that's all right, grandchild, says Risaki-Jack. I won't disrespect that. And so he leaves from there, still stooped over as he walks just like an old man. Then he was far from there. He had reverted back to being Risaki-Jack. It was truly a great ceremony that the birds had taught him. When he saw some willows, he immediately began to groan like he had a headache. Oh, my head! I have a headache, he says. So he takes out his eyes and throws them in the air, and they fall back into his eye socket. The second ceremony is truly marvelous, he says. He leaves them there. Once again, he sees some more willows, and oh, my head, he says. Once again, he takes out his eyes and throws them in the air, and they fall back into his head. He walks along. He is very happy that he was taught the sacred ceremony. Once again, he sees some willows. Oh, it's my head, he moans. And once again, he takes his eyes and throws them in the air, and they fall back into his head. Wow, this is a marvelous thing. It is truly a great thing, he says. Once again, he starts walking. Once again, he sees some willows, and he takes his eyes out and looks at these, throws them, and they throws them too far. They fall elsewhere. Now he can't see. He looks for his eyes. He's crawling on the ground. Every now and then, someone pokes him in his eye. Ouch, he says. He continues to look for his eyes there on the ground. Once again, someone pokes his eyes out. Eye socket. Ouch, he groans. He looks for his eyes some more. Where are they? Where are my eyes? He says. Once again, somebody pokes his eye socket. Ouch! He starts to go get a headache from where his eye socket is being poked. All of a sudden, he hears some laughing. Wow, he recognizes whose voice this is. The fox is once again teasing him. You just wait, fox. I'll teach you a lesson yet, he says. He crawls along there. He finds a tree. Who are you? He says. I'm a birch, says the birch. It is not you whom I want, says Risaki-Jack. Suddenly he knocks his head on something. Who are you? I'm a poplar, says the poplar. It is not you whom I want, says Risaki-Jack. He begins to crawl away from there. Suddenly he again knocks his head on something. Who are you? So we say, I'm a pine, says the pine. It is you whom I want, says Risaki-Jack. I'll take some pine pitch from there. And from the pine pitch, he takes some pine pitch. Grand tree, he takes the pine pitch, and he chews it and rolls into a ball. He's making it round. Once again, he finishes and puts another one pine pitch and puts him in his eye socket. Apparently, he had made himself another set of eyes. Once again, he can see. Now, where is that fox, he says. He walks along looking for the fox. He sees him sleeping in the distance. How can I get back to him to teach him a lesson? Shall I kill him? He says, oh, no, it would be better if I do something else to him. Let's see, I'll build up a fire where he sleeps so that the fire goes around there. The fox will die from the heat, he says. And there he builds up a fire. He builds up a fire around where the fox is sleeping. The fire begins to burn around the fox. Suddenly the fox wakes up. He sees a fire all around where he had been sleeping. Well, it doesn't matter, he thinks. He immediately jumps up into the air. He jumps over the fire. He can jump high. And he laughs. Only his tail got singed. And today you can still see that he is white at the tip of his tail. And that's how the fox got a white tip on his tail. There are lessons there. Respect ceremony. And look at how quickly the birds wanted to help him because he was an old man. They didn't even question him. They just saw that he was old and they wanted to help him right away. And this is one of our lessons that we're forgetting about. Just because somebody is old, like me, doesn't mean that they are wise. Doesn't mean that we trust them. This is one of the lessons being taught in this story. There are so many stories, so many lessons about that kind of stuff in the stories, in our traditional stories, that we no longer tell. But I'm glad that it's picking up.